somber, atmospheric. The courtroom was alive with noise. Chairs scraped, whispers hissed across the benches, and the low murmur of voices swelled like a restless tide. Dust drifted lazily through shafts of sunlight that cut through high windows, illuminating faces eager for entertainment more than justice. And at the center of it all sat an old man. He did not speak. He did not lift his head. His hands rested quietly on the worn wooden table before him, fingers lined with age, knuckles scarred with years the others could not imagine. But the room saw none of that. To them, he was just another figure brought in for judgment, just another relic of the past, slow, fragile, powerless. And so they laughed. Raunchy, cruel tones in contrast to somber. It began with whispers, sharp and cutting. Then came chuckles. Then laughter, bold and unrestrained, echoing off the walls of the chamber. "He can barely walk," someone muttered from the back. "Why bother with a trial? He won't last long anyway." The words stung the air, but the old man did not flinch. He simply sat, his back straight, his eyes lowered, as if the noise belonged to another world. The judge rapped the gavel once, twice. The sound cut through the laughter, but not completely. Even authority bent under the weight of mockery that day. Raunchy Ron Doc's place the tar dramatic flourish. The prosecutor thrived in the noise. He stood tall, voice loud, gestures theatrical, feeding the room with every accusation. "Here we have a man clinging to the past," he declared. "A man who wears years like armor, as though age excuses action. But age is not innocence. Do not let the wrinkles fool you." The crowd chuckled again. The old man's silence became their stage. But beneath that silence, something simmered. Raunchy raised his head only once, briefly. His eyes swept the room, not fast, not searching, but slow, deliberate. And those who met his gaze, even for a moment, felt a weight they could not name. It was not defiance. It was not anger. It was something deeper. Something that made even the most confident laughter falter, if only for a breath. Then his head lowered again. His silence returned. The chamber itself seemed to lean in, old wood creaking, the smell of dust and ink mixing with perfume and sweat. The jury shifted in their seats, restless. Some smirked, others pretended indifference, but no one in that room expected what would come next, because beneath the old man's worn coat, hidden from their sight, rested something more powerful than words, more piercing than any accusation. On the table, near his folded hands, the corner of a small case peeked from his coat pocket. Black leather, worn smooth with age. Most ignored it, but the judge's eyes lingered, if only for a second, and in that second, something shifted.
Somber, harsh contrast. "Tell us your story, old man," someone jeered. "Do you even remember why you're here?" Laughter erupted again, crueler this time, emboldened by the silence that followed. The prosecutor smiled. "See how he cowers? No words, no defense, just the weight of years." But they mistook silence for weakness. The old man was not cowering. He was waiting. The judge leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. That case, barely visible, half hidden. He had seen such things before, long ago. A flicker of memory stirred in him, unbidden. But he said nothing. Not yet. The trial rolled on, words sharp and biting, the crowd eager for more spectacle. And still, the old man sat in silence. They mocked him. They laughed at him. But soon, the laughter would die, because when the judge truly saw what the old man carried, the courtroom would fall into silence deeper than any gavel could command. The old man did not rise. He did not protest. His silence stretched longer than the courtroom's patience. The prosecutor's voice filled the void, but even his booming tone seemed thinner, as though bouncing off walls rather than piercing hearts. The jury shifted again. The crowd whispered. Laughter softened to murmurs. Curiosity gnawed where mockery once thrived. And the judge's gaze, sharp, lingering, rested once more on the worn leather case. He was back on the battlefield. Mud sucked at his boots. Gunfire cracked overhead. Smoke rolled thick and suffocating. Men shouted orders, drowned by chaos. Shells thundered. The ground quaked. And beside him, his brothers, not by blood, but by fire. He remembered carrying one through the mud, bullets snapping past, lungs burning, refusing to let go even when his body begged for surrender. He remembered the metal being pressed into his hand years later, not as a reward, but as a reminder of the ones who never came back.
The courtroom snapped back into focus, but the weight of memory lingered in his eyes. He adjusted slightly in his chair. The leather case brushed against the wood. The judge's eyes narrowed further. The jury leaned forward unconsciously, sensing a shift without understanding why. Mockery no longer filled the chamber. Not fully. Whispers rippled instead. Questions. Confusion. Why doesn't he speak? What's in that case? Why does the judge keep staring? The prosecutor's rhythm faltered just slightly. He slammed his palm against the table, forcing bravado. Do not be fooled by theatrics. He hides behind silence, but his words rang thinner now, because silence had begun to speak louder than noise. Room flicked flective, reverent. The old man's thoughts drifted again. It was years after the war, a hall filled with uniforms, a stage lit by harsh white lights. He had stood among others, but unlike them, he did not smile when the medal was pinned to his chest, because to him it was not a symbol of glory, it was a symbol of loss. Every glint of gold was a name missing from the room. He remembered the general's words, but they blurred. What remained was the weight of the medal itself. Not light, never light. Suspense, reverent undertone. The old man's hand shifted toward his coat, fingers brushing the outline of the case. The jury leaned closer. The judge's eyes sharpened. The prosecutor faltered mid-sentence, his practiced rhythm breaking against the quiet anticipation now humming through the chamber. The laughter was gone. Every whisper died. For the first time that day, the room waited. Onrully, Eber and form, Ucotes spethri vrountiv laupada. For the first time that day, the room waited. The judge's hand trembled slightly as he gripped the bench. He had seen such cases before. He had worn such silence himself years ago when he too had returned from places no man wished to remember. And now, staring at the old man, at that nearly hidden case, fragments of memory pierced his discipline. Could it be, he thought, but he dared not finish. Ron Rully fatidivas rewod folbergat. And the old man, with deliberate calm, began to draw the worn leather case from his pocket. The room leaned forward as one. The judge's breath caught, because soon they would all see, and the sound of their laughter would never return. The old man's hand trembled, not from weakness but from the weight of memory, as he drew the worn leather case from his pocket. It slid across the table with the faintest scrape, a sound so soft and yet so loud in the silence that had fallen. The crowd leaned forward. The prosecutor's voice faltered to nothing, and the judge's eyes fixed, unblinking, on the object. The case rested there, closed. Ordinary to some but not to all. Ronrehoers mungers. With deliberate calm, the old man opened it. The lid creaked. Time itself seemed to resist, as though the years clung to the leather, and inside, resting on faded velvet, was the metal, not polished, not gleaming, worn, weathered, the metal dulled by time, edges nicked, ribbon frayed, but it did not need shine. It carried weight, it carried history, and as light touched it, the room changed. Every whisper died, every smirk collapsed. The metal's presence swallowed the room in silence deeper than the gavel could command. The laughter that had filled the chamber moments ago seemed obscene now, echoing ghosts of cruelty that none dared repeat. Eyes widened, throats closed. Even the youngest in the room, who did not recognize the metal, who did not understand its full meaning, felt it, felt the gravity, because some objects carry memory so heavy it bends the air around them. The judge rose slowly, his hand trembling against the bench. His eyes, once sharp with authority, were soft now, wet with something long buried. "I know that metal," he whispered. His voice cracked. Gasps rippled through the room. The jury stared. The prosecutor turned pale. The judge's words carried more than recognition. They carried reverence. Right to those who had faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. To those who had seen death and chosen to shield others from it. It was not won, it was earned. And those who carried it did so not with pride but with sorrow, because every medal carried the weight of names never spoken again. The same crowd that had laughed now sat frozen, eyes lowered, jaws clenched. Some shifted uncomfortably, shame burning hot on their cheeks. Others simply stared, the weight of their mockery collapsing under the truth before them. The metal glinted faintly, dull light reflecting, but it was enough to silence an entire courtroom. The judge's voice trembled. "This man," he paused, gathering breath, "this man does not stand before us as a relic. He stands as a survivor, a protector, A bearer of sacrifice. He lowered his gaze, unable to meet the old man's eyes. How dare we mock him? Rond's mind drifted once more, unbidden. He remembered the night that earned him the medal. A bridge collapsing under fire. Men trapped on the far side, enemy advancing, no escape. He had gone back, alone, against orders, dragging one by one across the crumbling wood, bullets tearing the night. He remembered the cries, the weight of bodies heavier than any rifle, and he remembered the faces, some who made it, some who didn't. The medal had been given later, but the cost had been paid that night. Rond. What a sight for Reno. He did not speak of it. He did not defend himself with words. He simply let the medal rest on the table, its silence louder than any testimony could ever be. His eyes lowered once more, his body remained still. He had no need to prove himself. The medal did it for him. Rond, you has a found experiment. If you've wog, he ain't gonna have new picture to raise quite low. The prosecutor tried to speak. His mouth opened, but no words came. His arguments, rehearsed and sharp, crumbled like ash in his throat. He looked at the medal once more and lowered his eyes, for even he could not pretend it meant nothing. And so the courtroom, once filled with cruel laughter, fell into a silence thick with reverence, not ordered by the gavel, not commanded by authority, but born of respect, for the man they mocked was no relic. He was a witness of history, a carrier of sacrifice, a reminder that some battles never end, even when the guns fall silent. Ron, reflective, almost whispering, they mocked the old man on the stand, but when the judge saw the medal, the room froze, and in that silence, every soul present learned a truth. Honor does not fade with age, sacrifice does not rust, and silence can speak louder than laughter.